Well, ladies and gentlemen, we do have a very interesting situation here to talk about with the Carolina Panthers and their ownership not really gelling with the fan base, with the city of Charlotte demanding $650 million dollars for the $800 million renovation that the ownership wants to Bank of America Stadium to possibly keep them in Carolina for at least 15 more years, maybe up to 20 more years, you would think. If there's an investment of almost $1 billion into a stadium, it would basically force them to stay at the stadium at least for a decade and a half, maybe 2 decades. Now, the problem is, number one, when I look at this renovation, I am not impressed. I do not think for like a future stadium, an investment of $800 million dollars would be wise, because I just think even with this stadium and the renovations that they want to do, supposedly starting these renovations in 2025, completing them in 2029, a 4-year period where the stadium will be not under construction during games, but every offseason they're going to be doing different things to it. It's just not worth it in terms of looking at the final product. And I think by the mid-2030s, this will be, if they do go through with this renovation, this will be one of the worst stadiums in the NFL. You can already argue it is right now. A comparison I would make would be like Nissan Stadium and the Titans renovating Nissan Stadium rather than getting a new one. It's like putting lipstick on a pig. This stadium needed so much done to it. It almost needed like an Everbank Stadium 2.0, like the Jaguars totally changing their stadium with the brand new exterior on the roof. It's around 1.4 billion. The entire area is going to be around 2 billion, and they will be leaving for a year. So that's a more extensive renovation, and that's originally what I thought the Panthers were going to do if they went this route. Now, I had said I don't think it's worth it. Just build a new stadium. I know they love this area. They love the spot of the current Bank of America Stadium. But you can see this article. Could the Panthers leave Charlotte if they don't get the $650 million dollars from the city? So 650 out of 800 million, which is seemingly a little bit of a growing trend now when it comes to these renovations. We had a very similar thing happen with the Kansas City Chiefs, where they wanted the full $800 million dollars in their Arrowhead Stadium renovation from the city. They were lumped in with the Royals, and it didn't end up happening. And honestly, I don't think they're going to approve of this $650 million renovation from the city. Although, who knows? It's really a case-by-case situation. But the unique thing about this, it's not just the Panthers, it's also Charlotte FC, who is playing here. And when it comes to their current situation, back in June of 2023, this is why people are talking about possible relocation. The previous agreement with the Panthers and the city of Charlotte ended about a year ago. So now the Panthers could relocate without facing any penalties. Right now, we really don't know what's going on with Charlotte FC in terms of their relocation, but you would think, considering they are a soccer team, it would be easier, even if they had to pay penalties, possibly relocating, considering the NFL is a much higher revenue thing. And also the stadium was built for the Carolina Panthers. If the team does relocate in between now and 2027, the taxpayers will have the option to buy the stadium from the Tepper Sports and Entertainment Group, which currently owns the venue. And at that point, I mean, the stadium would be in really bad shape when you think about it, because it desperately needs a massive renovation. If the Panthers did relocate in between now and 2027, what would Charlotte do with Bank of America Stadium? Would they just leave it and try and host different events? I mean, at that point, I have no clue, honestly. It becomes almost like a Camping World Stadium 2.0, where it's this massive stadium with no real tenant, and maybe it hosts a bowl game, other events, things like that. Very strange situation. But yeah, this is not trending in the right direction when you look at the Panthers, where they are right now, where they finished this past year. The fans are extremely disgruntled. I mean, this team was supposed to have the number 1 overall pick. They traded it, and then they had the worst record in the NFL, so they couldn't even get the number 1 overall pick. You want to talk about catastrophic? It's bad enough winning, 1 game, 2 games throughout the entire season, and then not even having the first overall pick. It's crazy horrible now. Bryce Young should improve. You would think Carolina possibly wins 4, maybe 5 games, on the high end 6 or 7, but it's still not going to be very good. Last year, towards the end of the season, there was some bad, miserable weather in late December, early January in Charlotte. The attendance was brutal. It was embarrassingly bad, and it does not look like this is a good relationship. And now, after that horrible season where they had the worst record and they didn't even have the number 1 overall pick, the ownership has come out and said, we want public money because technically we have all the leverage. We can leave and relocate for no fee. And honestly, they could relocate tomorrow to San Antonio because San Antonio has the Alamo Dome, and then build a stadium in San Antonio. I'm not saying they're going to do that. That's just a random thing I'm throwing out there, to where if this actually does get to the point where this gets rejected, the Charlotte City Council is going to vote on it on June 24th. Could this really get bad to where Tepper comes out and says, yeah, we're thinking about relocating to San Antonio. We've got the Alamo Dome. We've got it ready, and then we're going to build a new stadium there. I think the question would be, other cities possibly courting Tepper when it comes to paying for the stadium, kind of like we're seeing with the state of Kansas courting the Kansas City Chiefs, trying to get them with a very nice brand new stadium offer that could be funded with state bonds, to where you wouldn't have to pay for a thing, and we'll build you the $2 billion dome translucent roof stadium. And that's what I think Charlotte needs. Well, look, we do have enough dome stadiums at this point. I'm not trying to sell a dome stadium, but I thought they would try and push for a new stadium. It seems like the ownership is really cheap. I know they had somebody, go around the stadium and see the structure, and they said, well, this is good for another 20, 25 years. And they said that they compared it to Nissan Stadium, because remember early in the video I said this would be like the Titans doing a renovation to Nissan Stadium rather than building their new stadium, which, by the way, they've already broken ground on, the $2.2 billion translucent stadium that they're building that's going to open in about 3 years. They said, well, they did an assessment and the Nissan Stadium renovation would cost $1.9 billion, which makes no sense. Just build a new stadium for an additional $300 million. That's what they did. And then they said, compare the $1.9 billion renovation that Nissan Stadium would have had to undergo to the $800 million proposal that they're putting out there now. But this is all irrelevant, because you can do a $100 million renovation, a $300 million renovation, a $500 million renovation, or the $800 million renovation. The point is, just because you're paying for less doesn't mean the stadium is going to turn out good. So I'm not sure what point they're trying to prove. I think this is a very comparable situation to Nissan Stadium. Yes, Bank of America Stadium is slightly better, but these are obsolete stadiums. It's 2 massive walls of seats, and you want to renovate it, you want to take out a few seats. Actually, apparently they're removing all the seats and replacing them, which teams do that. It's not anything crazy. It's not like a ridiculously expensive renovation. It's actually one of the cheaper things you can do when it comes to renovating a stadium, replacing all the seats. But it's like you're adding 2 or 3 social spaces. There's no overhang additions. The exterior, there is a little bit going on there. I'll give them that. But still, it doesn't fully close up the exterior of the stadium. You can still see through to the upper deck. So I'm really not understanding this renovation. And see, when things don't add up, that's normally when the relocation talk starts. And I'm not saying I want them to relocate. This is just a thing where it looks like the ownership is souring. Remember, I believe this is the ownership group that tried to build a practice facility in Rock Hill, South Carolina, and they abandoned the construction halfway through. It's a total mess. And they had a bunch of legal stuff they had to deal with. So this is definitely a situation we will be following when it comes to the Carolina Panthers. Maybe it's a non-story. Maybe they get the money, they get the $650 million, and they renovate Bank of America Stadium, which I think inevitably will be one of the worst stadiums in the mid-2030s, even after this renovation. Just looking at the renderings, I'm just warning people. And look, it's all right. I'm not saying it's catastrophic. I'm not saying that the stadium has an effect on the team, although I think Adam Thielen came out and said they have the worst facilities in the league. It's just, you look at it, and I critique these things, and it's not going to end well for this team if they do this renovation. The stadium looks like crap, even with the renderings released. and you're talking about 2037, 2038 with all the new stadiums in the NFL by that point, this thing's going to fall into a very bad state. So we'll see what happens, guys, but that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.